We'll now resume our conversation with Dr. Akomeno Oteri, a waterman with over 40 years of experience in hydrogeology and geophysics. Dr. Oteri?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you for staying with us. And now that the audio problem has been sorted out, you were trying to provide a background to the water resources bill. You may just continue.
So, like I said, I've spent 48 years postgraduate after a degree in geology, 43 years of that as in the industry. And I started off more in saltwater intrusion, which is where you are, by the coastal areas especially, you have salt water coming into your water-bearing bodies, like Lagos, Ikoyi, Lekki, and where have you. So quite a number of people have salt water in their boreholes. So our work is to be able to determine where the salt water is in the ground, at what depth, and at what depth you have fresh water, so that when you drill your borehole, you are getting fresh water. And to make sure that at no time do you have this salt water coming into your borehole. And you have to monitor it continuously, because once you have the borehole, if there is corrosion, salt water can come in. If that happens, it can affect your neighbors. And this is why there is need for monitoring and control by an authority, because once something like that happens, the authority can say, okay, for all these people around this area, stop using your boreholes, let's provide you with alternate water, so that the plume, the extent of the contamination will be reduced. Secondly, in a coastal area like Lagos, let's take Ikeja, when we had a lot of industries and many of them were working fully, they were pumping a lot of water, so the water levels were falling. And that has implications for many things. Subsidence, and the ground will start going down, intrusion of bad water. And one aspect of monitoring and control is when you have a situation like that, when you notice the water levels are falling, you can then tell the people to reduce how much water they are pumping, or spread the area they are pumping. And all these help in making sure that you don't have these adverse effects like subsidence and what have you. And, basically, water, whether it's surface or ground, has to be monitored continuously. If you take the issue in the Northeast in Chad Basin, a lot of authors say that the problem of Boko Haram is related to water. Why? Because in the 70s, some major dams were built in Kano State without adequate studies. And those cut off a lot of the water coming from just into Chad Basin. Similar things occurred also on the Cameroonian side. So amount of water to Chad Basin reduced drastically. Then also around that same period, there was a lot of irrigation projects in Chad Basin. And when they couldn't get surface water, they went into groundwater, pumping boreholes. This also reduced the amount of water, because water in the ground flows into a surface water body. In Lake Chad, it was flowing into Lake Chad. In Lagos, it will flow into the sea. So when you reduce the amount of water by pumping too much, then the amount of water in your surface water or river will dry up. And this is why you need to monitor, you need to control, but it has to be done properly.
Yes, and that is the question, doing it properly. I mean, many Nigerians will agree that yes, water is a scarce resource that needs to be managed. There is a politics that has developed around the National Water Resource Bill that is the issue. Afenifere, the Middle Belt Forum, the Ohaneze Ndigbo, Professor Wole Soyinka, Senate Minority Leader, Senator Inyinaya Abaribe, and others have said what the federal government, what the executive arm of government with the National Assembly is trying to do with the National Water Resources Bill will amount to, one, a violation of the federal principle of federalism, two, a violation of the Land Use Act, an attempt to grab land, and three, that this is Ruga, what was called Ruga by another means. And to worsen matters, the Minister of Information says this is an amalgamation of existing laws. And I guess when many Nigerians had amalgamation, they saw it as an attempt to steal their water resources. What's your take on all of these issues?
Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, let me say that I watched a video yesterday of
Tony Uranta.
Ronta,
Tony Uranta.
Tony on this subject. Then a professional colleague, a geologist who retired from the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, connected me to his brother, who is a member of the Geo-National Development Group. They want to come out with a statement also on this National Water Resources Bill. And he wanted to also find out the position of the Isoko Progressive Front, the Isoko National Ethnic Group. Well, when it came to that, I referred him to the President General of the Isoko Progressive Front. But on the professional level, I told him that I'm in support of monitoring boreholes, of regulating boreholes, but not the federal, what is in the present bill. First of all, I should also add that the current bill which is being debated, they have removed the aspect of annexing adjacent lands. I think that was a very contentious issue. I don't know why it was put there in the first case. Now that has been removed. But the Federal Ministry of Water Resources still feels it should be in charge of all water bodies that affect more than one state. To me, this is not very accurate, and a lot of other professional colleagues have the same opinion. Federal should be there, but we shouldn't be looking at cases. We shouldn't follow countries like Sierra Leone, Ghana, Zimbabwe. Those countries are running unitary systems of government, and they are small countries. Now, South Africa is another country which was mentioned in the press conference by the Honorable Minister. Its area is just a bit larger than Nigeria, but its systems of government is very different from what I could see from Nigeria. There, you have the federal government. They have provincial governments, all right, but their premiers are not like our state governments, too. Then their water governance, they have what they call they have provinces, and actually they have about 9 provinces, if I can remember. And then those 9 provinces have that water provinces. They deal with bulk water and sell to water municipalities, which are the number is much larger. But the case here is different. Here, state government is in charge of the water supply. And actually, during the press conference, one of the webinars, meetings we've been having, the Honorable Minister said federal government is not in charge of water supply in the states. Now, if you are not in charge of water supply and you want to control and come and say, okay, let's say in a part of Ikorodu like Ibeshe, that there is salt water coming in, so you need to close the boreholes. How do you provide them with water during that period? Or are they going to drink air? So the state governments have to be very much involved in the regulation at the elementary level, monitoring the boreholes, regulating drillers. There's a reason why drillers need to be regulated. One, the major area of getting data on boreholes is when you have the drillers register, so that when any borehole they drill, especially the deep ones, they give you the data to the agency in the state government. That is the only way you can get. And if you don't get data of existing boreholes, if you don't get data of existing boreholes, it's a major loss to the system. And this was stated way back in 1984 in a paper by Sekwale in Zimbabwe. I was at that conference with Professor Egboka. It's a major difference. This is the problem we have in Nigeria, that when you go to a place, like there was a time I was sent by my old secondary school, James Welch Grammar School in Mabel, to go and look at their water system. The first thing I wanted to do is, in that area, what depth do you get good water? Because at some depths, you get water that has iron. At other depths, you get water that is like, it's okay. If you go to the Lekki and put a shallow borehole because you cannot go deep because of salt water, you are going to be getting some water from your soak waste. So people with shallow boreholes in Lekki, because they cannot go to 200 and something meters, their water is contaminated with soak away, or if there's a petrol station leaking, their water will be contaminated. So you find out what depth you have the good water. Unfortunately, all the boreholes, they couldn't get any data except the one at Ede. where luckily there was some data, and I was able to know that at this depth, this is the depth to get good water. This is the type of sand there, and you look at the sand. Oh, the sand is coarse enough. That means it's a bit of like gravel, so that if I put a borehole there, I can get a large amount of water. But in this country, most of the time, you don't have that. So these are the problems we have, and that's why they should be. But the important thing is that in a federal system like this, is the state that should collect that elementary data. Then the federal will say, okay, these are we need data on this, we need data on that, and the states will do it. Now, in the case of surface water, what happens is that the federal agency, like the Nigeria Hydro-Geological Services Agency, which is already on the ground, will maintain some stations, say along the major rivers. The river basins are there; they have very strong hydrology departments, but there's no funds for them. So you need to also empower them with funds. Then the states will also carry out some monitoring, and all this data will be collated. So if there is a study, let's say we are in Lagos State, and you want to study anything in Lagos State, you need to have data from Ogun State. So you can have some people from the federal coming together with people from Ogun State and Lagos State. They will collect all the data together and do the study and make recommendations, which will then be effective. But this system the federal government is doing is they're bringing a new agency. Most of the money will go into public relations, legal, buying cars. But to do the real job, there won't be money. Even the JICA report, that's the master plan for the water resources of this country, was carried out by the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. But when you look at that report, they first of all came up, they done one in 1995. So when they started, they wanted a review. They first of all said, okay, we made some recommendations to the Federal Ministry of Water Resources to carry out. We were meant to have, say, 60 stations to carry out monitoring. How many are there now? And they found that the number of stations, instead of increasing, has decreased. They were meant to monitor a lot of groundwater in a lot of places. They found out that most of them are not working. So, and then a lot of the data, they say, the data that should be continuous, everyday data being collected for a number of years, 40 years, 50 years, most of the time is discontinuous, and you have data for only a few years. So most of it was estimates. And when you do something with estimates, the results you are going to get is estimates. Now we have to go like countries like Canada, Germany, India. So I don't know why the Federal Ministry of Water Resources didn't look at Nigeria, say we are a federation, we are a big country, and we should follow the example of those countries and do a system whereby the states are heavily involved and the federal is also involved. But one thing I need to say is that a lot of the states are not doing enough in water supply, and this is a part of the problem. Some are doing, but some are not. And everybody needs to up this thing, but the present system they are recommending, we need to monitor, but what the Federal Ministry of Water Resources is recommending is not something I will support. But when a lot of us have been talking on other platforms, people who are senior to me in the profession, who we respect, they have been saying, look, this method is not good. We need to tinker with it. But they say, it's been there, it cannot change it. So if you cannot change it, if the law has been made and you want to implement it, why take it to the National Assembly again? Why don't you continue and just do what you want? So, I don't understand what they are doing now. But that the present bill they have, I don't support it because it's not going to work. We are going to be in the same position. Thank you.
You complain about the multiplicity of agencies. The last thing we need is yet another agency. And you've made it very clear that the model that we ought to be following is not what's been considered. And yet the federal government has described this bill as a done deal. Voices like yourself, experts like yourself, are not going to get the opportunity to present your views at a public hearing. What is your response to this?
Well, when you're talking to somebody and he says he has finalized, he has done everything, and you know it's not going to work, you do your best. They will insult you, they will say you are this or that. But you have to have your own principles. Something's either going to, they've run this system before. And when you go to international forum, and people bring data. I mean, like right now, you have different organizations say, okay, look, we are looking at, take Lagos, for example. Lagos on the water resources here goes to Ghana. So an agency or federal at one level, either UNESCO or ECOWAS, will come and say, okay, look, Ghana, we want this information from you. Nigeria, we want this information from you. So we want this information from you. We find that Nigeria will not have any information to provide. I have a map here in one of the publications where a map of the world was drawn to show how much water is being abstracted, how much water is being taken from the ground versus how much water is being recharged. By recharge means when rain falls, the water goes into the ground. So is that water that goes into the ground, that say the water that goes into the ground is in Ogun State, is what we are drinking in Lagos. Now, if for one reason or the other, the water going into the ground in Ogun State decreases, it will affect us in Lagos here in a lot of ways. Now, they wanted such a map, and for Nigeria, they said no data. Other countries in the world, most of them had data, and some, oh, this is the ratio, but Nigeria, no data.
Okay.
So
okay,
this
sir.
is the issue.
Okay, sir.
Shouldn't we be working working towards rejigging the system, ensuring there's more research, ensuring there is more data? Because it saddens. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, shouldn't we be working to ensure there's more research, there's more data? Because it saddens me that in Benin Republic, in Abidjan, smaller African countries like we call them, government gives me water. I can pay a water rate and I open my tap and it's going to be clean government water. But despite the fact that we have a water bill that is a contentious issue now, most of us can't still open our taps to get clean government water. Most of us have boreholes. Shouldn't we be working on rejigging the system that an average Nigerian gets clean potable water that might be supplied from government, even in the first place? Shouldn't be that our priority?
Well, the two should go pari passu. That is, we should be going together. You cannot say get water supply and stop monitoring and data collection because in front we have problems. Now, in Nigeria, the public water supply is state. Like in Lagos State, for example, they had a plan some years ago that by 2020 they will double the amount of water they are able to produce from Adiyan, from Iju, from Shashi. But for so many reasons, the Adiyan phase 2, which was meant to have been on stream now, is still under construction. They have borehole schemes. Most of them are not working. But we know in Lagos, you and I know that all of us depend on boreholes. VGC is boreholes being run by private entity, and they are getting water. Nigerian breweries that is producing beer, Coca-Cola, 7-Up, they are using boreholes and they are getting water. So many companies. So they are running boreholes successfully. Why is it that the state governments cannot run? Take a state like Delta. For 20-something years, they've been constructing water supply water works. 20-something years. It's not finished as we are talking now. But take Cross River, for example. At the same time that Delta State had the loan, they had the loan also. They were able to build a good water system in Calabar, distributed, put water meters, and people were getting water from the taps. They have now extended this to Ikom, Ogoja, and Obudu. But the problem they have now is cost of operation and maintenance. What do I mean by that? You are taking this water from somewhere, you still have to treat it because water production is very expensive. You have to put some chemicals to make it up, to bring it up to World Bank standards. You have to have power to be able to push it. And what have you? And NEPA bills are high, chemicals are expensive. So you need to collect a lot of money from the consumers to be able to pay part whole, if not part of the expenses. But the problem is, so our various states, they need to do more. They're not doing enough at all.
But, Prof,
but meanwhile, monitoring still has to be going on. I hope I've answered your question.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Akomeno Oteri. There are other issues we would have loved to also bring up, like the status of our river basin development authorities and all of that. But we want to thank you for joining us today on The Morning Show.